I'm Anita Huberman. I'm CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. I'm also an honorary captain of the Royal Canadian Navy appointed by Canada's Defence Minister. Thank you for attending this morning's event, all focused on creating accessible workplaces, a conversation about why inclusive employment matters. I'm so pleased to have the co-chair of the President's Group and President and CEO of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, Mr. Robin Silvester, joining us this morning. He will speak shortly. I'm coming to you today from the unceded territory of our Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen-Katzie, Semiahmoo, and Tawasin First Nations. Events like this simply do not take place without sponsorship support. This event is presented in partnership with the President's Group. And I would also like to thank the Surrey Board of Trade's Business and International Trade Center sponsors, the law firm of Fasken, the Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan represented by SNF Benefits, and BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada. Thank you so much for your support. Just some instructions before we begin. All attendees are muted. If you do have questions while you're hearing the presentation, please submit them through the chat function. We're going to have some interaction with you after the formal part. And if we're unable to get to your question, we'll get to it and respond to you after the session is over by email. If you would like access to the live captions, you can turn them on by clicking on the closed captions icon on the user control ribbon, or you can open this stream text link in another browser window. And the instructions are actually in the chat function right now. So again, you can open the stream text link in another browser window if you want to be able to control the font size, color, and other elements. If at any time you have any issues with the accessibility features, you can email info@accessibleemployers.ca or text our tech moderator, Trish, at 604-879-1386. The Surrey Board of Trade, we are Surrey's city building business organization. Our whole mandate is to support business and attract business into Surrey. We are one of the 10 largest chambers of commerce, boards of trades in Canada. There's 450 of us, and we've all been supporting our business community. We have the only pandemic rapid response business center in British Columbia in partnership with the BC government to be that concierge of connections, to instigate change at the different levels of government, to ensure that businesses and organizations have the supports that they need during this pandemic and beyond. We created Canada's first COVID-19 playbook for business, really meant to be a human resources tool and really a tool for businesses and their teams to get through this pandemic, to ensure business sustainability, to provide workforce support. It's all available on our website at businessinsurrey.com. Surrey is going to be the largest city in British Columbia by 2030. We are still growing by 1,200 to 1,400 people a month. And we have so many amazing assets in our city. And it's all about, when we talk about the pandemic, when we talk about business support, we're talking about workforce development. And today's session is about workforce development, workforce support, workforce partnerships. Now, the Surrey Board of Trade, in partnership with the President's Group, is offering a newly developed certificate training program to help employers build their skills and confidence in hiring and managing people with disabilities. We need to ensure that we have full labor participation. We are still facing a labor shortage during this pandemic and beyond. And we need to really have those supports, those knowledge supports, and education and awareness training for employers, for managers. And so we're so pleased this morning to be partnering with the President's Group on a Creating Accessible Workplaces certificate. It's a free, yes, free, 5-part course that can be completed online at your own pace. Each module only takes 30 minutes to complete. Participants will learn the business case for inclusive workplaces, legal requirements, terminology, and common workplace barriers that employers can address. And here to discuss the importance and relevance of this training is our guest, the President and CEO of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, a great partner of the Surrey Board of Trade, Mr. Robin Silvester. Robin, over to you.
Thanks, Anita. No, look, first off, thank you for this opportunity to partner with you on this important initiative. I should probably just introduce myself a little. I'm Robin Silvester, as Anita says, the President and CEO of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. I'm going to slow down my speaking. I'm trying to learn to speak at a more sensible pace in the interest of the interpreting that's going on as well, which is really important. And for those of you who don't know, the Port Authority is the organisation that sits at the heart of the port with a mandate to enable Canada's trade. So we have about 450 employees. We have a range of activities around managing the port. But frankly, that's not why I'm here today. I'm here today to talk to you as the co-chair of the President's Group. And the President's Group is a group of employers from throughout BC, the CEOs or senior leaders of whom came together probably about 5-6 years ago now with support from the provincial government to really start to look at how to change the dial on inclusivity of people with disabilities in the workplace. And really to look at it from the point of view of organizations large and small across the province, and from the perspective of those of us in leadership positions who make hiring decisions and make a major contribution to the culture of the organization. And so really the group has done a lot of work on various different sort of ways of building inclusivity, shared a lot of experience around the table. And I'd be the first to say I'm not a complete expert in this. What I am is someone who's totally committed to it and has the honor of leading a group or chairing a group of people who share that passion and commitment to increase inclusion in the workplace for people with disabilities, because we know it makes good business sense. It's the right thing to do, and it makes good business sense. So maybe Anita, that's my intro. And do we want to just sort of, how do we want to do this? Do we want to just sort of head into some questions, or do you want me to keep, I could keep rambling on, but maybe you've got some questions to sort of focus around.
I do, Robin. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have any specific questions for Robin or myself, about inclusivity, what supports that you need, about the certificate program that we're offering to you to really enable full workforce participation, please put your question in the chat function and I will get to it. And so, Robin, I wanted to ask you, why do you think inclusion should be a priority for companies or for not-for-profits in the midst of so many competing priorities during this pandemic?
No, it's a great question, Anita, because it really is kind of foundational, isn't it? It's sort of why does this matter to businesses and organizations? And I think there are several really compelling answers to that. And part of it you mentioned in your introduction that, I mean, we're in a growth environment as we return out of the pandemic. We know we're in a region where finding and retaining employees can be a challenge, even when the economy is a little less strong than it was, say, a year or so ago. And we know we're going to move back to growth where that challenge to find employees becomes even more acute. And so what do employees look for when they look for an organization? Well, a lot of people, or if not everybody, looks at culture. They look at, does the organization match my values? Is it doing something I'm interested in? Does it walk the talk? And we're all fortunate to live in a very diverse region that has, I mean, and as you mentioned, Surrey is particularly fast growing. A lot of the growth in our region comes from immigration. I'm an immigrant myself. And we have a lot of diversity to tap into that really makes this region so vibrant, and that as organizations, we should be reflecting, but also we need to tap into to have the highly skilled employees we need to make our businesses successful. And there are so many competing priorities for any business, but for any business, top of the list has to be getting and retaining good people to carry out the work of the business. And inclusivity is such a critical foundation for that. If we don't create an inclusive environment, we unwittingly probably are closing ourselves off from pools of talent that can help us advance our businesses in a really successful way, from people who want to contribute to the success of our organizations. So I'd say number one reason is to tap into the talent and diversity that's available in this region. And in particular, thinking about the President's Group, to tap into that area of that talent pool, people with disabilities, which unfortunately is still quite often overlooked. We need to change that. And those of us who move forward in advance can actually tap into that pool to find employees who are going to be very capable, very committed employees to help drive our businesses forward. So it makes good business sense. The other thing, the second reason I would come to is that also, particularly for consumer-facing businesses, we know that people pay attention much more than they used to, and it's really good that they do, to the values of the businesses that they choose to spend their money with. And when consumers are looking at a business, they want to see a business that reflects their own diversity and inclusion values. We know in Canada, we're a very diverse society. We know Canadians value diversity and inclusion, and it's good business sense to not just talk about it, but to do it in terms of making sure you have a diverse workplace, that the reality of your workplace reflects the values of your organization in a way that your customers and that Canadians will see as a positive thing. So again, it makes good business sense. So I'd say it's a great question, and it's really important as business people and leaders of organizations, we think not only about the fact it's the right thing to do, it is, but there's a very good business reason for doing it as well.
Robin, currently over 250 companies have participated in this accessible training certificate program. And why do you think that there's still so many businesses that don't want to hire persons with disabilities? Is it because of supports? Is it because of legal requirements, or what?
No, and again, really good question, Anita. And I think in many cases, it's not necessarily that they don't want to. I think it's just that they have caution because they don't know how to or what they might be faced with because it's unknown. And we all have a natural hesitation about things that are unknown to us. And that's really where this sort of training program comes in. That I think it really gives people in a very accessible way, both in terms of the sort of, you can get at the information through all of the accessibility standards, as you would expect from material from the President's Group, but also it's set out in a straightforward way that's easy to understand and to take on board. It gives really good accessible information about what are the legal issues you need to consider. How does the duty to accommodate work? How do you think about sort of accommodation in your workplace? How do you sort of go about making your workplace more accessible? Both things that you might have thought about and things that you might not, just really good practical tools. And how do you start to think about changing the culture in your organization to make sure that it is an inclusive organization? So I think the benefits go beyond just people with disabilities when you're thinking about inclusion of that group, but it's very focused around that specifically as well in an accessible way to help people who are thinking, well, this sounds like a good idea, but what does it mean for me? I'd really encourage you to sign on for the program. As you said in your introduction, it's free. We're delighted to be partnering with the Surrey Board of Trade in this way. I really appreciate the partnership, both as the President's Group and as the Port in my day job. But we're delighted to have this partnership to make this a program available to your members and to really publicize it. Because coming back to your question, I don't think people necessarily don't want to. I think they're hesitant because they don't know what they might need to think through. And this program gives really practical tools in 5 modules of 30 minutes each that you can study at your own pace whenever suits you to answer the logical questions that you'll have and to give you the confidence to take that first step. And I'm sure once you've taken that first step, you'll be comfortable walking down the path and you'll realize, just as I've been saying, there's really good business value as well as it being the right thing to do in focusing on inclusion for people with disabilities.
Robin, what about the Port? Are you having your staff participate in the course? Are you hiring persons with disabilities?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say around the President's table, I'll be totally transparent. We're not as far through this as I'd like us to be. That's part of the reason I'm actually pleased to be involved in the President's Group. It's great. It's a great way for me to improve my understanding and to learn how we can do better. But absolutely, I mean, a few stats with the board. I mean, we have, as I said, about 450 people. We're going to be having about a quarter of them go through this program. Because obviously, and really our target is to have ideally everybody involved in management and hiring go through the program so that they can understand that sort of this is something that's straightforward, it's simple. There are some things to think about that they can get the information they need from this program, and really to make us just further attune us to been focusing on inclusion of people with disabilities in our organization. In terms of how we're doing, we have around 5% of our organization self-disclosing as having a disability. So we do have a good number of people with disabilities in our organization. Frankly, it's not as much as I'd like to see. I think we could do more. I think we can be better than that. And that's why I'm really pleased for my organization as well to be able to harness this program to broaden the thinking within my own organization about how we continue to build the inclusivity and the diversity within our organization. And another thing that was really interesting to me, Trish, who's on as the tech moderator today, but is also the senior consultant for the President's Group, she came along to do a lunch and learn in our organization a few months back. And this is just kind of, it's the normal lunch and learn in an organization. We send out the invitation to everybody and people can choose to sign up. And 120 people signed up to hear from Trish about inclusion of people with disabilities in the organization, the work of the President's Group, and how we can all improve our progress. And that's just, for me, that's a really interesting indicator that goes back to what I was saying about culture, that 120 people chose to spend their lunchtime listening to a presentation from Trish about what the work that she's leading for the President's Group and that we're trying to do as an organization to improve the diversity of our own organization, the Port Authority, and to further make our organization more accessible. And it really just resonated for me that it shows that it matters to people. People pay attention to this. The way we build the cultures of our organizations as business leaders, we know is a critical part of the sort of attractiveness proposition of our organization. And to have more than 100 people sign up in their lunchtime to hear about this says, this is an issue that matters to people. It just reinforces that, again, it's a key component of culture that employees want to feel their organization is playing a leadership role in.
Robin, you're highly engaged, of course, in the large corporate community in Metro Vancouver, but you're also highly engaged with our small and medium-sized business community, many of which, consider the Port a foundation to ship their goods. Some of them right here in Surrey. I wanted to ask you, when a smaller business doesn't have a lot of time, doesn't have a lot of resources, but needs to hire people, do you think this training is going to be providing the supports that they need in terms of workforce development?
Yeah, no, a really important question. And exactly as you said, I mean, small business is the engine of BC. I mean, the reality is there are more people employed in small businesses in BC than in large businesses. So for us to be successful in the President's Group, our goal is to make BC the province with the highest rate of inclusion of people with disabilities in the employee base. That's our goal. For us to be successful, it's critical that small businesses take up the sort of the mantle just as much as large businesses. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the President's Group and really learned from, frankly, in a big way. And we have a mix of businesses around the table, from sort of small owner-operator businesses to sort of the HSBCs and the Bilo Foods and the big sort of, and then large employers of many people, ICBC, and with businesses in the middle that are sort of, I would call medium-sized. Many people might say are large, like the Port Authority or the airport. And we have that great diversity of experience of really stepping up to the challenge and the opportunity of employing people with disabilities in an organization. And my co-chair, in fact, Lisa Beecroft, is the owner of Gabby and Jules Bakery in Port Moody, which has a number of bakery sites around the Lower Mainland. Fantastic pies, if anyone's looking for pies. She gets free endorsement from me, I'm not on commission. But she's got a personal commitment to this and a real passion for it, in the same way that we all have, I guess, around the table. And she's made huge steps in employing people with disabilities in her organization. And I've learned a lot from her in terms of just her real commitment and the way that she's worked through the sort of some of the initial challenges and trepidation that we just talked about that people naturally have, and really made it a part of the way she sets out her organization and just is the core values of her organization. And this program is, I think, in some ways particularly useful for small businesses because it's set up to be, as I say, it's 5 separate modules. You can work through them in your own time. They're freely available to you at a time that works for you. And they're intentionally designed to be just really practical advice to help you take that first step. So again, you highlight a great issue, which is this is not a big business issue. This is an all business issue. We can all move the needle on this. And the training and certification program is set out to really try and support that change.
Robin, not sure if you can answer this or Trish, but what about hiring persons with disabilities in the tourism or hospitality sector? You know, we are going to see a significant labor shortage in that sector post-pandemic, you know, due to certain factors that are well known. You know, what advice can you give to that sector in terms of not only participating in the training that's being provided, but access to labor?
No, it's a great question. Let me say a few things, and maybe Trish, you might want to come in and add a bit as well. But so first off, I'd say that, I mean, if we think about the tourism sectors, a number of the organisations around the table in the President's Group, and Translink's another as a member, for example, as well, have come to the table saying, well, first off, for us, it's really important for us to think about accessibility for our product. I mean, our customers represent our potential customers are the population of BC, or in the case of tourism, kind of the population of the world. But why on earth would we rule ourselves out from a big part of the population by not being accessible in the products that we offer, the services that we offer? So a lot of the organizations start from the point of view, which is really important, of thinking about accessibility for their customers. And then they sort of reflect on it and say, well, but actually also we should think about accessibility within our organization. So Translink would say, we've put a lot of thought into how we make the transit network accessible. And we haven't actually stopped and thought as much as we want to. They were saying this a few years ago. Now they are thinking a lot about it. They hadn't thought as much as we want to about and making our organization accessible for our employees. And then I think by going through the process of thinking about accessibility for employees, you learn things that can be sort of even more valuable as well in the way you think about accessibility for users of your service as a business. So I'd say there's some great synergy that comes out of that. But I'd also say to the sort of the point in your question as well that, I mean, we know that the tourism sector has been one of the hardest hit in the COVID downturn, and it's really, I mean, it's a real challenge for businesses in that sector. We see it in our organization from the cruise business, of course, because the port normally has a big cruise business that's a big part of that sector. So we know that sector's been hard hit. But as I talk to people in that sector, I mean, while they're clinging on at the moment, they all have confidence the sector's going to come back. And then it's going to be a matter of definitely employment, trying to get the employees you need to ramp up quickly as tourism restarts is going to be a challenge. And that's where tapping into all of the employee pools that you can, the potential employment pools that you can, is going to be a competitive advantage. And so the President's Group tools can give you the training can give you the tools you need to tap into what is a really well-qualified employee base, potential employee base, of very committed, very capable employees who just happen to have a disability that you can, if you can accommodate it properly, as I'm sure organizations can, it has no impact on people's ability to do a fantastic job for you. So it's a great way of responding to what is going to be that looming talent shortage as the industry emerges from the challenges it's facing at the moment. I don't know, Trish, would you want to add anything? We have Marsha Walden on the table as well, around the table, don't we?
Yes, I just added into the chat a link to Destination BC. So they're a member of the President's Group, or I should say Marsha Walden, who was their CEO and president. She's now moved to Destination Canada. And it's very exciting for the President's Group because she had such an incredible amount of leadership in helping create tools through Destination BC for the tourism and hospitality sector in becoming more accessible and thinking about all of the tourism opportunities for people with disabilities and their families in British Columbia. And now that she's moved over to Destination Canada, it's so exciting to think about what additional capacity and support her organization will bring on I'd say on a national scale and international scale through her work at Destination Canada. So some really great resources there in terms of thinking of the customer base. And I think Robin said it very well, that we're going to see as we recover labor shortages in certain sectors, and there are many organizations in the community that are keen to connect businesses to job seekers with disabilities that really want to be involved in support in customer service related and customer facing roles.
Robin, the President's Group, and we've provided some submissions to the President's Group too, works with the BC government through the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. Can you provide a perspective to the audience of what kind of advocacy or what kind of change has been instigated in terms of policy and legislation to ensure that more employers have the tools that they need to hire persons with disabilities?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And again, we can also refer people to the material on the President's Group website to get more information about it. But really the President's Group came together with kind of two areas of sort of focus around that core goal of improving the accessibility of businesses to people with disabilities. And the two key areas were, one, what I've been talking quite a lot about really trying to sort of change the culture of businesses from the top to be more attuned to the opportunity and the solvable challenges to really tap into that great sort of potential employee pool. So that was the one piece. And the other piece was to work with government. We're really appreciative of the relationship we have with the provincial government that's enabled the group to come together and do the work it does. And really to be an arm's length advisor to government from the perspective of business as government goes through the process of putting in place accessibility legislation. We've already seen federal accessibility legislation come in, of course, championed by, in fact, our local MP, Carla Qualtrough, who I imagine many people will know, who's, as well as holding various ministerial portfolios, has also competed in the Paralympics for Canada. So she's got great experience and passion that she brings to the table and on the issues of inclusivity. But we're now also seeing the provincial government, we're expecting the provincial government to table legislation to really, again, just make sure that businesses are thinking about this. And at the President's Group, we see that as an opportunity, not a threat. We see it as that. I mean, it's absolutely something, as I say, that we're all committed to. We believe all businesses should be committed to. And so we think the introduction of legislation is a positive step. And we want to work with government in the way that other organizations, like I'm sure the Surrey Board of Trade will, to help government frame that legislation in a way that helps us all move forward towards this goal of BC employing the most people with disabilities as a proportion of the workforce of any province in Canada. And I think and I think I've been really pleased with the openness that government has had to those conversations. And I can see real commitment from the government to get legislation in place, which we think is entirely appropriate, and to get it right, so that it really helps stimulate that change and further stimulate the inclusion of people with disabilities in the workforce.
Is the President's Group or the BC government working at a grassroots level from the perspective of service organizations that support children with disabilities or in the school system to really ensure not only inclusion but also knowledge that we're all humans, we all have our strengths that we bring to the table, and we all have opportunities in the economy, but it really starts when we're in the school system, right? What's your perspective on that?
Sure. Well, for the President's Group, our focus is very straightforward, is in the workplace, not in the schools. So we really wanted to focus on the really sort of addressing issues in the workplace and really motivating businesses to step up to the opportunity. So we're not focusing on the school area. I know from the conversations I've had with the provincial government, although I'm not the right person to talk to in detail, I know that of course they're thinking about the whole the whole piece, from school through employment. But that's not an area that the President's Group specifically engaged in. We're really focusing on trying to provide educational materials for business to help businesses really play their part in making this positive change.
A question for you, Robin or Trish, related to the not-for-profit sector is, are there any grant opportunities or supports to the not-for-profit sector to hire persons with disabilities?
I'm sure there are, and I'm not actually the best person to answer, but Trish, you've popped on the screen, so that gives me hope that you.
Yeah. I was going to say that I'll add my email address into the chat, and the person that asked that question or anyone else that is interested in getting connected to funding. I know that we had a blurb from Neil Squire Society that came up earlier specifically around assistive tech, but Work BC has recently been releasing funding that can help with wage subsidies for employees for a certain period of, I think, 16 weeks. So I have information about that I'd be happy to share with anyone that's looking for that right now. It was pretty time bound. I think it was for the next month, the application process, but I understand it was very quick application, something you could fill out in 5 minutes. There was a maximum number of employees that you could apply for, but it was pretty generous. So I'll add my email address in and happy to send it along. Oh, and it looks like Neil Squire Society is confirming that, yes, I've got it right. So we'll make sure that you get the information about that if you're looking for it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Trish.
Thank you so much, Trish. And Robin, I wanted to ask you just a final question is, what advice would you give to any business taking the leap into employing persons with disabilities? What's your final advice?
I'd say take the training that's available free through this program to learn more about it if you don't already know about it, and take the first step. Use the resources that are available to tap into this potential pool of employees that can really help you move your business forward. It's one of those things that, just as we've been talking about through this last half hour or so, that sort of it's natural for people to have a bit of uncertainty about things that they haven't experienced before. So take advantage of the tools and the training that are available to give you the confidence to take the first step, and I'm sure you won't look back.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you so much, Trish. And ladies and gentlemen, your call to action. The Surrey Board of Trade, in partnership with the President's Group, and they're working actively with the BC government, as you heard, we are making it free for you to attend this Creating Accessible Workplaces Training Certificate Program. It's available to the first 100 businesses or organizations that register. It's free, and all of the information is on our website at businessinsurrey.com, or you can phone the Surrey Board of Trade at 604-581-7130. Ladies and gentlemen, together we're making Surrey an opportunity city, and that includes human capital. That includes workforce development, workforce support. And I'm so pleased to partner with the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority and the President's Group on this morning's session. If you have any questions following this session, please feel free to contact us. And with that, I'm asking you to make it a great business day.